Hello, everybody. Let me know when you can see my screen.
Yes.
Excellent. All right, so it's myself and Carolyn Musselwhite, who is actually the one who taught me all of the shared reading strategies that we will be looking at today. In today's webinar, what we're really hoping you'll be able to take away from this is by the end to understand the very strong link between learning to write and the process of writing and learning to use an alternative communication system. We hope you will have learned how you can model writing using your students' communication system to increase your own knowledge and awareness of how to construct messages as well as for your student. And that this process of learning how to do shared writing with our students, how it helps us develop really personally and meaningful, engaging text so that they've got reading material that they're actually excited to read, which will further support the rest of what we're working on. Within Maureen Never's 5 Steps framework, today is very much about sort of a teaching approach in terms of shared writing as an instructional tool in our toolbox, and we'll be using the tool itself of communication systems, either a robust core word systems such as the Proloquo, the Touch Chat with Word Power. We've got kids using Lamp Word for Life. We've got kids using Speak for Yourself. We've got them using Avaz. So whatever robust core word system you have, or pragmatically organized vocabulary, and by that I mean the pod books that are very common in our Angelin community. To start with, just in terms of thinking about what writing is, we just need to remember that literacy is really just language in a visual form. So speaking is language in a spoken auditory form, and when we reduce it to a written visual form, that's when we're now reading and writing, essentially. So writing is when we reduce language to some kind of visual symbol system so that we can share it with people who aren't right here in the same room as us or aren't right here in the same time as us. I can write a note to my aunt and she can read it next week, or I could have descendants who read it 100 years from now, right? So I've been able to reduce it to a visual symbol form so I can communicate with people who aren't right here with me right now. And reading is when we interpret that those visual symbolic forms that others have generated so that we can understand their thoughts and their message they're sharing with us. So literacy is really just using visual symbol systems. And you can see there the really strong connection to our kids who are learning to use visual systems to be able to communicate, why that's just such a strong form of literacy. This graphic will be very familiar to all of you who've been following the webinar series. It's just really intended to show us how language develops. Language develops very holistically. So when we're working on writing and reading with our students with Angelin, we're also working on their expressive communication. We're supporting them to be able to express their own messages. And at the same time, we're also developing their receptive understanding, their receptive knowledge, their receptive vocabulary, their listening comprehension. So it all develops together. And if you try to separate these out, if you try to say, well, this year we're just working on communication, we'll work on reading and writing down the road when our students are more ready for it, then that's actually where you'll find that we're going to undercut our own best efforts, because reading and writing are so closely connected to how our kids learn to communicate that they only reinforce it. What's particularly interesting for us to know about our students with Angelin is that using a communication system is more like learning how to write than it is like learning how to speak. So writing is when we have an idea in our head and we translate it into this visual language so that others can understand our idea. But when you're beginning to write, this is the work of Janet Sturm, if you're one of those early writers, so think of a kid who's kindergarten, first grade, they want to be able to convey all the ideas in their head, but they're very constrained because there's all these words they understand and can think, and then there's fewer words that they can actually say and use, but then when it comes to actually the number of words that they can produce in writing, they're very constrained by that. So when our kids are writing, when any emergent student is writing, they're very constrained by the words that they're able to produce. And if we look at those typical early writers there's a child in kindergarten and first grade, you can imagine that huge vocabulary of words that they understand, that are used all around them. But then there's that smaller group of words that they can actually speak. And there's a much smaller group of words that those kids can write and spell so that they can actually produce in a visual symbol form that others can understand. So if you listen to a 6-year-old tell a story about something that happened at Halloween, they're going to be able to understand a much more complex story than the one that they can tell. But if they have to actually write about what happened at Halloween, you're going to see a much more limited kind of language that emerges from that. And what Janet Sturm's work showed us is that this is a very similar process for our students who are nonverbal, who don't use speech, because they actually completely miss that kind of phase in between from all those words I understand to the words I can really easily produce with speech, to then that much more limited set of words that I can produce visually so that others can understand my story in written form versus just oral. So when our students with Angelman are trying to share an experience that they've been part of, it's almost like they have to write without ever having had that opportunity to speak. And this is why we make have put such huge emphasis on making sure that all of our students have access to a really robust communication system. Because if I'm trying to write a message, I can't predict every word that I'm going to want to have. I'm going to be going through my brain, thinking of all the words I know and trying to figure out how to produce them. And when we limit kids to a really limited communication system, we're really constricting anything they can express, and we're really constricting the whole writing process. So writing is just communication made visual. And where it's particularly important for our students is that when we go to model writing for them, and when we go to model just using their communication system, period, whether we're trying to write with it or not, we slow down. We provide a lot more processing time for them. We know that our students with Angelman tend to have huge visual processing strengths. They tend to be highly visual, and when we go and model writing for them, we are supporting their ability to process the language that's being used around them. We're going to slow down, we're going to give them more time, because it's going to take us longer to generate the message using their system than it is if we just speak it. And I put a note in here to consider video modeling. And video modeling is anything that takes what we're trying to model and just creates a video of it. You know, Kate Ahern is an expert at this, and I think she uses her very high-tech bra to be able to hold her phone in one place to start recording so that her hands are free to show what she's doing with her hands on her communication system. It's really that simple. We're just creating a very simple video with whatever camera we have access to so that our kids who need the most processing time can review what it is we're talking about over time. We know what we're learning with students like my own daughter Maggie is that when we model writing, just as when we model using a communication system, we're actually reducing some of the demands on joint attention that can be challenging for our kids who might appear to not comprehend as much, or might appear to have traits that we commonly see in kids with autism. So for example, kids who really struggle to both look and listen. When you're modeling writing using a communication device, one of the first things you're going to do is not put a big demand on the student to look at your face and to make eye contact with you. And so that alone seems to be one of the supports that can be helpful for our kids. Now, there's others of our kids who are so highly social that they want to maintain that eye contact, and we're going to have to really help them shift their attention to seeing what it is we're doing with the writing, what the task is, so that the task isn't just about interaction. But you'll find that modeling writing is highly social and highly interactive, but at the same time might be more accessible to some of our kids than, for example, you can imagine an educational assistant sitting down with a child modeling something like, how are you, and now staring at them waiting for a response. When we model the writing, we're taking some of that performance demand off of our child because our hands are busy, our eyes are busy, and we just might make it a little bit easier. what we're doing when we model writing is we're providing a slower and very deliberate model of communication. We have to really think word by word and take our time finding them. And what's really nice about modeling writing and not just modeling a communication system is that because we've reduced it to writing, we can now read about it afterwards. We can now read what we wrote, and now we can dramatically increase the amount of repetition of the words that we're trying to emphasize, of the messages that we're trying to emphasize. And so writing with our kids just provides a tool to give them a lot more repetition to what it is that we're trying to teach them. Writing really matters because when we model writing for our students, it slows down the process. It makes us be very deliberate about how we construct messages. And we'll over the course of this year, we'll show you how we model writing on a letter-by-letter basis with something like a keyboard. But for today, we're just looking at word by word. But what you'll find is that as soon as you go to show a student how you can write using their system, you're going to become much more deliberate. We create a permanent record of what we said. So this is particularly important for students with Angelman because there might be that amazing day where all the stars align and they're able to tell the story, and then for the next week they might be much more locked into their body and not be able to share the same story. But if we've created a record because we wrote down what they said, then they can keep sharing that message over time. They don't have to reproduce it every time. We know that some students in general, as well as some students with Angelman, actually learn to communicate through writing. Writing is the door with which they are able to access literacy and communication and language. And we know that ultimately our goal really is to get to a place where all of our kids can access the alphabet to support their communication, because the most fabulous communication systems, the very best state-of-the-art communication systems, still can't have every single word that conveys all the nuance of the English language. And so the more that we work on writing with our kids to develop those literacy skills, we are helping to build their autonomy in communication over time. So modeled writing just really means all we're talking about today is using the student's communication system to model how we can write messages. We're making it very explicit how we construct a message. So we can talk about, we can do think alouds of, today we're going to write about things I like. I see the word I and like. I'm going to select I and like. Now, what is it I like? I wanted to talk about how I like TV shows. Where would I find that language? So you can see that we're making it very explicit, the whole problem solving that we go through to construct messages. When we model writing, we're demonstrating the why. The why we write. We want to keep in mind that many of our students with Angelman syndrome have complex sensory needs. They may have not seen all the people around them writing and all the reasons they write. So all the times when we sat down and wrote out a grocery list, or we were writing a note or writing an email or sending a text, we don't know how many of those models our students were able to observe if they have things like cortical visual impairment, or if we weren't talking aloud about what we were doing. So for some of our kids, they're just becoming aware of this concept called writing, and we're going to model for them why it matters. We're going to provide, what we're going to find is that when we are modeling writing for our students, we're going to get some of our very best practice using their communication system as a tool for writing. So for example, if you're the classroom teacher or the special educator and you decide that over the next few weeks, each week we're going to have a different I like message that we're going to be modeling writing with, and you now have the paraprofessionals, you have the speech therapist, you have the family, everybody's thinking about the I like messages. We are all going to really learn that child's communication system and how to use it as writing. So we could say this week we're writing about places we like to go. How would we do that? And just in that process of planning that as our focus, we're going to be thinking about where we find words like I and like on the child's homepage, where we find places, how we navigate their system, whatever their system is, to be able to construct that kind of message. And all of this kind of shared writing is going to provide a lot of repetition to our kids to really see how they can put 2 words together and 3 words together to make messages, but they're going to see it being done in so many different ways. It won't feel like repetition because there will be so much variety. So I think last week we talked about sort of an instructional framework to understand where our students are at, knowing that our brains have been primed to learn in the beginning any new idea we're trying to learn. In the beginning, we just learn by observing. We learn by becoming aware of something that other people are doing around us, and then we want to explore it and imitate it. So think of a newborn baby. Everyone is talking to that newborn baby, and slowly the baby becomes much more aware of all the different sounds in language, and then starts exploring language, starts babbling, and there's that long, slow process before the child is actually able to participate in any kind of actual language back and forth. So for many of our students with Angelman, they're at that very first stage. They are building the foundation of awareness of what's happening around them, and that's fine. That means that for some of our kids, for many of our kids, we're going to start using their communication system to model writing, and they might have absolutely no idea of what we're doing or why we're doing it, and they may not participate. And that's okay, because it's developmentally appropriate for them to simply right now be observing. Observing, and then over time our goal is to really get them exploring, to get them imitating what we're doing, and then predicting, oh, I know what this is. This is that writing we do every week that we've been doing for months. Now I can predict the process. I know what's going to happen here because my special educator has been doing this with me for a while. We're making messages about things we like. I know what she's going to do. She's going to navigate in because she already talked about animals. She's going to go to my things, and she's going to go to my animals. And she's going to invite me to be part of that with her and to select an animal or select whatever it is that we're finishing that sentence with. So for many, many of our students, it's all right to understand that right now what we're doing is modeling, and we might not see them participating yet. They might need to see a lot of models of what this is before they can predict and understand what it is we're doing and then start participating. And you can see that it's a minority of our kids who are at that stage of mastery where they can independently put it together, where you can say to them, tell me about something you like, and they can say, I like, and be able to finish that sentence. And that's okay, but just know that so often we've set up things in our classrooms where we're asking kids, show me this, or tell me this, or say this, or finish this. They might not be at that stage yet, and that's okay. We want to understand where they are in this framework in terms of awareness, participation versus independence and mastery, and make sure that we're providing that model that meets them where they're at. Regardless what stage our students are at, whether they're just becoming aware that they can even construct messages with the communication system, or if they're already constructing messages, we still need to be modeling. We still need to be modeling for them how to use their system to write. We might have a teenage girl where we're modeling how to use her touch chat to do a Facebook status update, right? We might have a preschooler where we're modeling how to use her communication system just to say, I like mom, or I want mom. There's so many different things that we can be doing it for, but no matter what stage our students are at, they will benefit from us modeling how they can use their system to write for a whole bunch of different reasons. We might be modeling how they can use their system to develop a shopping list or a Christmas list, or to brainstorm ideas for Halloween costumes. There's all kinds of things we can do, but wherever they're at, we can model their system. This framework of really thinking about kids in terms of first developing awareness and then participation and then independence comes from my favorite books that kind of support teachers in thinking about this are Dorothy Hall and Elaine Williams' Building Blocks books, and they're just based on applying Patricia Cunningham's 4 blocks model to younger students, to kindergarten students, knowing that in kindergarten we have many kids who might start kindergarten with no idea of what the purpose of reading or writing is. So these are meant for gen ed teachers, but they're incredibly helpful for all of us as we're understanding where our kids are. So within that instructional framework, we're just remembering that some students are at a point of mastery where alone we can focus on what they will do, that student will do, to use this skill of using their communication system to write a functional, personally meaningful message. More of our kids are at a stage where they can participate in that. We can scaffold them, but it's something they're going to be doing with us. So we might generate the I like. They might set the theme or the topic, like, oh, I like my family, and we'll go to their people page. And now that we've scaffolded them to their people page, we did the navigation, maybe we modeled, I know someone you like, you really like your Aunt Kathy, that will then see kids being able to participate in that. Oh yes, Kathy, I like Kathy, right? And be able to participate. And for other kids, it's very much, what are we going to do? That's what our focus is. What am I going to do with this student so that they have a model of what I'm doing and I have no expectation that they're going to participate or perform? And what many of you may have seen is kids who maybe last year, maybe last month, they actually started using their system this way. They started being able to finish a sentence, and we were so excited, and then they stopped. And now we keep saying to them, tell me this or show me this, or we know they can do it, but they're not doing it. And if you're seeing that, we really need to go back. Let's go back to the awareness stage. Let's go back to just presuming that right now they're just observing, because chances are what happened was as soon as our students started using it and actually participating, we probably stopped modeling as much because we felt that they could now do it. And they might just need to see more models. So this visual will be familiar to you if you were on last week's webinar. Today we're focused on writing, which is along the right-hand side. So for those students who are at that awareness stage, we're going to be modeling many ways to write, and we're going to emphasize their communication system because that's going to support their use of their system to communicate as well as to write. For our kids who are really starting to be able to predict and participate in all these different kinds of activities, we can do much more formal, what's called predictable chart writing. And you'll see kind of a quick introduction of that today. And really, this webinar isn't yet looking at those kids who are at the mastery stage, particularly some of our teenagers who really are at a stage where the models that they'd like to be doing is sending text messages, sending iMessages, sending status updates, where maybe they're writing using their communication system to really show us what they know about the classroom curriculum. We have many students with Angelman who are at that stage, but that's not going to be the focus of today. So our focus today is really those kids at that first stage of awareness where we're trying to teach them the why. We're really trying to get them motivated to want to be part of this activity of writing in the future. And I'm going to hand it over to Carolyn to talk about what this shared writing looks like. She's going to describe a shared writing experience, and then we'll go into more detail in each part.
Great. So one of the things I want to point out is we're doing this base for what's sometimes called predictable chart writing. What we're doing here is we're making a chart that says I like, and it doesn't have to be fancy. You can see this is not at all fancy. I also just want you to see, I didn't know my picture was being taken. This is a candid photo. I'm holding it up and somebody took a picture. I'm having a lot of fun. This is not a faked photo. I think that's really important, that this is a fun activity. This should not be work. If it feels like work, then we're not doing it right. We're having a ton of fun all coming up with what we like. And you can see that the first couple of people were the adults. I like, and that we filled in what we like. So we modeled first, and we used an AC system. We just didn't get an idea out of our head and then write it down. We said something we liked, and then we went to one of the students and found that word on their system, and then we wrote it down so that we're modeling our part too. It's not just what the students are doing. So you can see a couple of different versions of I like stories. Erin, if you'll go to the next slide, we'll look at another one. But we wanted to be sure to show you this, that they're not fancy. Someone obviously got to this one and did a little tearing. That's okay. This is a very fun activity, and it's something that doesn't have to be perfect. And we sometimes use different colors. The kids got to pick it. What color do you want me to write your sentence in? They're just having a lot of fun with this as we're holding up markers. You can see that this group had, I can't see the first one, but I think that was Gretchen's, and then we had Allison, and then we had Erin, and then we had Meredith and Becky. We had a bunch of adults model, and then the students started modeling. So you can see the T and S. These are what the students came up with. I like to swim. And you know what? 2 kids said they like to swim, and so did Becky, and that's okay. In a kindergarten classroom, sometimes they will tell you, oh no, you have to come up with something different. We're okay with that for our very beginner students. And each time we came up with one of these, I like to swim, we had to go try to find that on someone's communication device so we could model how we would find that language on their system. Okay, so next slide, please. So how we choose the word, especially when we're doing the awareness stage, we're looking at their favorite objects, and we might actually have a real object right there and hold that up and say, oh my gosh, you love trains, that's a great one. Let's go see if we can find that on your system, and then we're going to model how to get there. We're going to do that for the student who's at the awareness stage, but also the student whose participation, we're going to model that link. So if we're using a pod book, we're modeling how to go to categories. If we're using Colloquo, we're modeling how to go to the folder that will then have a subfolder of vehicles. Whatever system they're using, we're showing them how do we get there. We might have a remnant book that has a ticket because they went to see the movie Frozen and they love that movie. And so we might grab out the remnant book, and when we get to that page, the student is just like really exciting and reaching out and grabbing and touching it, and we're like, yes, you like Frozen. You know what? Frozen is on your communication device. Let's go find it. So now we're just going in and making that connection to an object, to an actual photo. So we have here a photo of Sadie having so much fun with a crocodile. So if she picked that photo about something she really likes, then we would have to find something. Maybe we find the word crocodile, or maybe we just find the word animal because she likes animals. So this is the type of thing we're choosing, but then we're going to the system to model how to find it on the system. So if you can jump to the next slide. Just samples of some of the systems that some of our students are using. So you can see we have a Proloquo system, we have a pod, we have a touch chat with word power. So we're definitely doing Dance with the Girl You Brought. Whatever system that student's using that has a robust vocabulary, we're going to try to find the word on that system if we can. This is the time that we can start introducing categories and how to be really planful. So next slide, please. And then we can make it really fun and over the top. So we did a story, and Sadie said, I like swimming. P.S. Sadie is not swimming with these girls. I just went online and found a cute picture of girls swimming and put Sadie's face in there. She loved it. She wanted to read it over and over. It was very fun. But guess what? It made it fun for the other kids too, because now they want to reread it. So just getting this over the top is so much fun. I use the app Kid & Story. We're not telling you that you guys have to go out and start getting this high-tech app. We're just saying as you do this more and more, this is a fun way to kick it to the next level. Next slide, please. Again, this was I like Pepeta, and so Brenda chose her pacifier, and the word for that in Portuguese is Pepeta, and I could easily have taken a picture of her pacifier and put it in there, but instead I got this really funny picture online, and she thought it was hysterical. She loved it when she came to this really crazy pacifier that of course is not something that she owns or uses, but she thought it was really funny, and so did the rest of the kids, so they wanted to read it again and again. And next, so now we have a couple more trains. Again, there was a train that we've been playing with, and I could have grabbed that for this picture, but instead I put the student on top of the train, this crazy train going through the Rockies to make it really fun. And we had watermelon for lunch, so that's what Sophia picked. I could have, again, taken a picture of the watermelon we ate, but to put her inside the watermelon was just so funny and fun. So motivation, engagement. If kids aren't having fun, we're not going to hold them for as long. We're not going to get them to repeat it as often. Next.
That's it.
So
all right. Go ahead.
We're starting with that student's AAC system. We're setting a theme. And I'm going to let Erin, I'm going to let you take this because you wrote this. So I'll let you go ahead and jump in here.
All right. And keeping in mind that for those kids who are at the awareness stage, we might be, in the beginning, we're going to be writing these books for them. If they won't yet participate, that's fine. We're not going to slow down what we're doing until they're willing to offer us one. Now, we want to look to them. What are the things that we know that they like? And we're going to obviously put those things in. We're going to keep making the invitation. I hope you guys get that message over and over again, that this is really all about inviting kids to be part of this experience of using language to share who you are and what you care about. So we're going to constantly make the invitation. But it's fine if you find yourself making all the first books for your child and not having them actively participate in the beginning. So we're going to start by, we need to choose what our message is. We're going to start with the student's communication system. And for today's webinar, we're focused just on the message I like, because that's such a powerful, there's so many ways that we can share who we are and what matters to us using really just those 2 words plus the categories and other things that are in our communication systems. We generally want to set a theme, and what that does is just create coherence to what it is we're talking about. So maybe it's places I like, maybe it's animals I like, maybe it's people I like, but we're going to set some kind of theme. And when we set that theme, what we're finding is you're now giving direction to the other people you're trying to involve in modeling. So maybe mom has really gotten on board and is trying to model the communication system over and over again, but is having a harder time getting other family members to be part of it. When you start to do the shared writing and start modeling what we're doing with writing, we can say to grandma or dad or uncle or sister, whoever it is that we're trying to bring in, can you just work with us just for this? We're going to just really quickly make a book about things we like to do. And that's it. It's just things we like to do. So activities we like to do. You just model just this one piece. And when someone has participated enough, just the I like to, and now however it is on the system that we now communicate what it is we like to do, that has now taught them that navigation, and that has now hopefully have started to reduce some of the anxiety that they often have around using a system. What I'm finding is the #1 reason people don't model communication systems with our kids is because it's so new, it's so unnatural, it's so unfamiliar, and we have a lot of performance anxiety. And so by setting a theme and by making this just kind of a discrete task of just modeling writing this one message using the child system, we can kind of break this down into one doable thing that each of our child's communication partners can do. Once we have written the message with the communication system, so if I've used my daughter's proloquo to say I like and gone to people and said I like Jordan, now I need to transcribe it to paper. I need to just write it down on paper. That's all I mean by that. I just need to find some way to create a permanent record. And we're going to show our student through this model of shared writing that that what I can say with my communication system, I can also write down. And you saw examples of that with Carolyn's photos. And then after that, it's really just a matter of creating opportunities to keep reading and sharing that message. We can keep adding to it over time. You might find in the beginning that you write a book for your child about all the foods that they like to eat. And then over time, they start adding additional pages. So we're just looking for opportunities to keep reading it, keep sharing it, and just really keep it dynamic. So we're starting with the child's communication system. And what we've talked about in this webinar series is core words. If we look at the core words we've started with, we have I, like, want, not, help, it, more, and different. So for today, we're going to focus on like. But you can see how we can rearrange these words. We can replace want for like if that becomes a word that we want to focus on. We can completely change the intent of the messages by adding the word not. I like it more. I like this more. I like something different. There's all kinds of ways that we can use these different words to help us form that initial message. But for today, we're just focusing on I like. You're going to start by modeling what you like. You're going to start by trying to get others to be part of modeling what it is they like. Or you're going to start by writing a book for your student, and you're thinking about all the things that you know your student likes. And I encourage you to pick a theme, such as however their system is organized in terms of folders or categories, but pick a theme and write a book about it. So it might be that your theme is things that I like, or things that Maggie likes, things that Ethan likes. If that's your theme, then that's fine. We're going to go across categories to find all the different things we like. But just come up with some coherence that way. So if this is your communication system, so this is just a screenshot of Proloquo. You can see where I find the word I up in the top left corner. And then like, I've got to move about 5 symbols over on that top row to find like. And now what is it I want to talk about? If it's all the people in my child's life, since our kids with Angelman tend to be highly motivated by books about all their people, then you can see I would go to my people category. It's about midway down on the left-hand side. If I want to talk about things such as animals, basically all my folders of nouns are in my things folder. So it might be objects, it might be animals, there's all kinds of things in my things folder. So if I want to write a book about favorite animals, I'm going to go to my things folder and I'll navigate from there. If I'm writing a book for my child about all of his favorite foods, you can see I would go straight to my food folder right there down on the bottom. And that is another often very popular book to write with our kids because, you know, many of our kids are highly motivated by food. And sometimes writing a book about foods we like can actually help with those kids who have become obsessive about food, because a book about foods we like allows us to model talking about foods and not just requesting foods to eat them. And instead we might decide that we're going to write about things I like to do. And you can see I would find all those additional words right there in my actions folder on the bottom. Or I might want to write a book about places I like to go. Many students with Angelman are highly visual, and so many of our kids remember places they might have been to for 5 years or more. They'll recognize the landmarks that were associated with some experience they had at a specific place and get very excited. And so books about places that they like are often very popular. So there's a whole bunch of different ways we can think about what that theme could be, but some of those categories, like I said, might be people, might be activities, might be foods, might be places, and I'm sure you'll be able to come up with many more. And when we're doing this, it's really a fill-in-the-blank activity. So we're starting with a really predictable carrier phrase, or what we call a sentence frame, such as I like. That's your carrier phrase. And now we're going to add the new word to the end. And you'll see that what we're trying to do here is create that predictability. For kids who are beginning to participate in these kind of shared writing activities, they understand what it is you're doing, they've seen you do it before, they're predicting, they see you model, I like things, animals, penguins. And then they see the next person, I like things, animals, polar bears. And they see the next person, I like things, animals, koalas. And when it comes to them, they're already starting to predict. So that predictable sentence frame, that carrier phrase, allowed them to start getting themselves ready to start thinking through the process so they can now participate to select their own. And we can mix it up. So for example, one of the core words that we're focusing on this month is the word not. So at the end, let's get silly. Maybe we've made a book of all of our child's favorite foods, and now we know they hate broccoli. So we'll add a page at the end like, you know, I like broccoli not, or I do not like broccoli, that kind of thing. We're writing it down. We're transcribing whatever that communication message is that we helped them create, whether it was in their Light Tech Pod book, whether it was in their Proloquo. We need to take the words now that we've generated and just get them down on writing. We're not talking fancy stuff here. It can be scrawling it on paper, the chart paper that you saw photos of with Carolyn. You'll see a whole bunch of examples coming up in just a minute in terms of just taking the paper that you've got available. I usually like to use Sharpies, because it's such a bold print, and some of our kids have visual processing issues where the more that we can use, you know, really bold print like Sharpies, that just helps. What I find is that when we've made these books and our child has a paper copy of it or a paper book, those tend to be the easiest to share socially. It can be harder for our kids to, for example, share a book that's on their iPad with other people. It's harder to have more kids gathered around their desk looking at their book when it's just on an iPad, and some of our kids simply don't want to share their iPads. So, so when we make them a paper version, however we want to do it, they can be completely homemade, that's fine. With many of our kids, we need to laminate them, and we often bind them with something as simple as cable ties, and you'll see some pictures of those. For other kids, we might model how we're going to write it down by putting it straight into a digital format. So what you're looking at right now is called a Keynote presentation. It's just Mac software called Keynote. There's an app version that's very easy to use that could be on their iPad. You might write the message down into Keynote. You can even copy and paste. You can export text. So for example, if you use a system like TouchChat or Proloquo, and I think the Compass app does this, you can actually copy that message and then paste it in. So we're showing our kids how they can take that message that we generated in real time, and we're going to get it written down. We can use software like PowerPoint. We can use storybook apps like Pictello. We can use the Kid in Story app that Carolyn showed earlier. What we find is that when we write these words down and put them in the digital version, it might be motor-wise more accessible for our kids. So kids might be able to reread those books more easily if they're digital. If they have something like text-to-speech, which Keynote now has, which PowerPoint has on a computer, which Pictello has the best, then they can have it be read to them. If they've got that, whatever we've written down, that I like book. If it's in a Pictello book or if it's in a Kid in Story book, then the app can actually read it to them. We can also write the book in Keynote and PowerPoint and Pictello and Kid in Story, print it out, and now have a paper version as well as a digital version. And for some of our kids, we make video versions as well, or we even do all of these. So for example, something Maggie really likes is when I make her books in the app Pictello, and then I can export, I can make a PDF, and I make that into a video. I can print it out. So she really seems to like having her books read repeatedly, many times over, and having them in many different formats. So I like being able to do it in something like Pictello or Keynote, because from there it's very easy to make the other formats. So this is just a homemade version from a really extraordinary family in California. They were using the carrier phrase, I love, and they were adding in people and places. So I love, this is obviously a more complex one, but I love Ava and Mia at the park. I love Dima at the Jelly Belly factory. I love Papa at the playground. And notice that on each of these pages, the person who actually wrote that message has put their name on the page. That's for multiple reasons. For many of our kids, that makes it more socially engaging because they love that association of the person who generated the message, right? And remembering who it is who loves this or likes that helps us share how that's what makes us individual, is all the different things that we like. We're also putting names on because we know that the first sight words that kids tend to recognize is often names. And for many of our kids, including my own daughter Maggie, the first decipherable word she typed was actually someone's name because of having done this process repeatedly. So I love Papa at the playground. I love Ava at the beach. So that was just one homemade version. I think this family used Google Images to find, or just printed out their own photos, and you can see how they printed out their text. This is an example when Maggie's class was doing predictable chart writing in small groups called a communication circle. They just wrote out their messages on construction paper and then actually cut them out and put them down on page. So this is nothing fancy. It doesn't have to be fancy. These were all able to be done over the course of one recess. And I suspect, looking at this one, I like to laugh that Maggie was laughing while the kids were modeling how to do this, and they ascribed meaning to that and said, how would we say I like to laugh using your Proloquo? And then they turned that into a sentence and put it on. These pages then, they were just hand illustrated, just quick drawings, and the educational assistant then bound them and laminated them. I want to buy. This was interesting because, so Maggie's friend Maisie actually wanted to say, I want to go shopping, but got impatient and found the word buy sooner than she could find go and shopping, and she shortened her sentence. And I found that the more that we do this kind of predictable chart writing with our kids, or this kind of predictable writing, this kind of shared writing, the more we realize how often we are going to edit ourselves from that process of, here's all the ideas in my head, I'm translating them into the words I have access to, and I'm actually going to limit my own message, because all of us, just like our kids with Angelman, all of us want to be as efficient as possible. And it's not at all uncommon to see people just simply find the most efficient message, giving up kind of the larger, maybe the more creative message with more language that they wanted to use. And that created a lot of conversation with the kids about what it must be like to be Maggie and to have it take this much effort to generate every message. Of course, she's going to constantly edit herself. But it just created more empathy amongst other kids for how hard it is to find messages. This is an example of a really quick video. Literally, I think all we were doing was going to the zoo. We did a quick setting up where everybody just had to model what it was they wanted to see, and then I just made a really quick video for Maggie to be able to watch on the drive to the zoo. And you can see how this was nothing fancy. That arrow is helping to draw attention to the text itself. And this very simple recording, I mean, I did not turn this into a book. It never became Pinterest worthy. This is all it really was a really quick video. We can illustrate those messages that our kids generate in a whole bunch of ways, or that we generate for our kids if we're in those beginning stages of just really capturing their attention and developing their awareness of what it is we're doing. So maybe you've got photos, you've already printed or had printed. So many of our kids love photo albums. So if you've already got photo albums, then those are perfect. Use those to illustrate your stories. We can use old magazines, old calendars. We can go digital and use things like Google Images. We can print out the photos that are on our child's camera roll or on our smartphone, or we can just make the books digitally to begin with, where we have the photos right there on the same device, and we can draw, as you already saw. There's all kinds of different apps if we really want to have fun drawing, but we can just get out pencils and crayons. So don't feel like this has to be perfect, and it never has to go on Pinterest. And the kind of books that we might make can be as simple as this. So here's a digital book. This is just using the app Keynote with pictures that we already had. I like Daddy. I like Mama. I like Sarah. And we can broaden it. So I like Girl Guides. Now this is something I like to do. This is a group that I'm a member of. It can be celebrities. I like One Direction. I like Harry, right? So what matters is that we're using our child system to generate these messages about things we know that they like. We are extending the invitation for them to participate, but we're not requiring it, not if they're at those beginning stages. We're just modeling how much fun it is to do this. I think I showed this 2 weeks ago, but I'm going to show a few pages of Talmadge's book. I am Talmadge. I love karate. I love my family. So the only thing that can make this book even better is to first write it with the communication system, right? So you can imagine how excited Talmadge was by this book and just how engaging it is for our kids to have these kind of books about themselves. The only thing we're doing different is using their system to write it, and really thinking of all the things that our children like, all the things they love. It helps us evaluate whether their system can meet their needs or if it's been too limited. Because if we can't say all these things like, I love my family, I love karate, I love to hug, if they're not in their system, but we know these are the things our child loves, then we know that we've got work to do. I showed this one in an earlier webinar. This was Tyler's I Like Girls book. This was a shared writing in that Tyler clearly shared what it was he liked, which was the three beautiful blonde girls in the room. But he wasn't otherwise excited in participating, so this was just writing for him. So really developing, he has the awareness of what writing is. He just didn't think writing was anything he wanted to be part of. So I like Nadia, I like Sydney, I like Nikki, I like pretty girls. I like this girl. I like this pretty girl. And then we got silly, ew, gross, not pretty, not a girl. That's his brother. I like pretty girls. So the only difference is making sure we're using the child system to write the book about what it is they care about. And if kids get excited about these books that we've made, then we've developed their awareness of what writing is, what reading is. Some folks like to put symbols in books. This is an example. I see a cake, I see a girl, I see a cat. So you can see the carrier phrase is I see a, and they were looking for objects around the room. My only caution here is it's fine to use the symbols as an illustration for the page. So you'll see the predictable phrase, I see a. We're not trying to put those symbols on. We're going to use the child system to create these messages. That's where those symbols come in. All we're using the symbols for here is as the illustration for that noun at the end that they might not be as familiar with that symbol yet. And if you think back to the reading webinar we did 2 weeks ago, what this is a highly predictable book where the illustration is allowing the child to begin participating in the research, the reading process, because they can use the photos to help them predict what the sentence is. But we're not trying to go symbol by symbol, and we're not pairing symbols with words, because the research shows us that that actually slows our child's reading development rather than enhances it. So then once we've made these books, the trick is to now start reading them. And we know that kids at early stages of literacy, those emergent students, they really like to read about themselves. They really like to read about what they like, what they do. We know that our kids with Angelman really are so often the most motivated by reading about all the people in their life. So if we even just make very short 4, 5, 6-page books about things our child likes, over time we can add additional pages. Over time we can say, oh wow, now that you've gone surfing, you really like surfing. Let's add surfing to your I like book, the things I like to do book. And we might see more participation over time as we add pages to the same ones. But you can see how having a book about all the things I like actually gives me a tool to carry around and show to other people about who I am as an individual and start having more social interaction. When we first introduced the sight word, or the core words like, we put up in the Facebook group this Tar Heel Reader book. This was one example. And I'm just going to show it again because it's just such a lovely book. This is from the free website Tar Heel Reader. If you simply search in Tar Heel Reader using just as search terms, just the words you want to emphasize, you'll find a bunch. And what's lovely is you can download these right to your iPad, right to your computer. Now you can download them right into the app Pictello and have books very readily available, as well as now you can change out the pictures. So look at this book, thinking about people your child knows and thinking about if there's photos that you would substitute. So the book is called We Like Each Other. He likes her. I'll bet there's a he who likes a her in your student's life, in your child's life. She likes him. They like each other. He likes her. She likes him. They like each other. If your student loves dogs, don't change those pictures, right? We don't need to change any of these if they're engaged by it, but if they're not, we can make it more personal. And this is obviously one step past that shared writing, but I'm just trying to show you some of the other resources that you can use that will reinforce all that same language. And here's an example of how we're going to switch things up at the end. But he does not like her, and she does not like him. They just do not like each other. So we can write these kind of books with the whole class. So what we like as a classroom, where each child gets to add a page. We can write these kind of books in small groups within the child's classroom. It might be what we call their communication circle, which is peers who are kind of intentionally supporting our child's use of their alternative communication. It might be that you've got some English language learners in the group, or you've just got some volunteers during downtime, and this is a great time to go, hey, let's write a book about all of our favorite musicians, all of our favorite celebrities, but we're going to use Maggie's promo code to do it. So I like Katy Perry. Where would I find Katy Perry? I'm going to go into people and celebrities and find Katy Perry, right? And get everyone problem solving how it is that they're going to finish the message. Make sure that people's names, whoever generated that message, so if it was Erin who liked Katy Perry, Erin's name needs to go on. We can do it a few different ways. It can say, I like Katy Perry, and in parentheses, Erin, and you saw some examples of that earlier. Or we can say, Erin likes Katy Perry. Jordan likes whoever the next person is, Harry Styles, etc. And invite families to be part of this. If you're a school team and you're doing this shared writing, give families a heads up that next week we're going to be writing about people we like, or celebrities we like, or characters we like, or Halloween costumes we like, or holidays we like. Could you guys send in what it is that you like? Could you try using your child's system to tell us what it is that you like? Send that in to us so that we can reinforce it, because we know that involving families is only going to deepen it and deepen the modeling that will be happening around the student. So we can use students. In states that have a lot of English language learners, you'll find that it's incredibly helpful for all of those students beginning to learn English to learn how to use the student's communication system to generate these messages, because it basically allows them to use their recognition memory and allows them to have a visual anchor for the language that they're trying to learn. We'll do repetition with variation. We're not going to do this just once. We might make an I like book about all the things that Maggie likes, and then next week we can do I like places, and the next week it can be I like animals, and the next week I like different celebrities, and the next week I like activities. We can start to do things like I like to, and that's when we'll do maybe actions or activities. You know, I like to swim, I like to fly. We can do I do not like to, or I like to go to, and do places. But what you'll see is we're going to provide a lot of repetition of words like I, like, and to. We're just adding one more word. It won't feel like repetition if we do it right. And that's what matters. I think what Carolyn talked about in terms of making sure this is fun, that it feels like fun, that it feels like play, is probably the most important message you'll get from this. And Carolyn, you've got some additional resources on Pinterest to show more about how we can do this.
And so this, everybody doesn't need to go grab this and do this. This is, you know, in a couple of months you try some of these, and you can then go read about the entire predictable chart writing strategies. This is particularly some of the teachers who want to do this in your classroom. I have some resources for you as well.
Awesome. And Carolyn, is there anything else you want to add?
Nope. Hoping we have some little time for questions, so let's keep going.
All right, so possible next steps, do be brainstorming sentences that you can do this shared writing with using your student's communication system. You can use the core 4 that we've talked about, and you'll see there's already so many ways we can combine and recombine those 4 words, or those 8 words that we've covered so far. But this is really where we get to start getting into categories, because we're not just hoping that our kids will learn how to use 8 words here. Where it starts to get fun is when we get into categories, because the categories are the specifics that they really care about. The carrier phrases, those high-frequency words that allow them to really communicate about those things, are the core words. But now we can start really getting into their categories when we delve into shared writing. So model writing a simple book. We strongly invite you to share whatever you make in the Facebook group. There's already several examples that people have created and shared, and you'll get so much inspiration, but it's just very exciting, particularly when you see how engaged the kids become when they have these personalized books. So invite your student to participate. If your student is at a place where you can model, you know, I like to go to the movies, and your student, if you help them get to places, will say, I like to go to the zoo, or whatever it is they like to do, then by all means, of course, we're expecting them to participate. But if they're not at that point yet, that's okay. They're still at that awareness stage. We will just model for them. We'll brainstorm. We'll do think alouds. We'll say, oh, you know, when we went bowling, you really laughed a lot. I think you like to go bowling. Let's do a page on that. And when we went to the zoo...
Somehow Erin's got cut off right now, but so I'm going to just jump in. just the idea that you went bowling, you love that. Let's see if we can find that on your device. So we're having them participate, but we're also setting up supports if they're not ready to participate. And then reading the books together is absolutely, if we don't get books and we don't read them together, we haven't maximized this activity. But I want to just caution you, you don't want to have them reread these using their talkers. The idea, I see people doing this sometimes, please don't. We don't have to go back and read, I like, let's find bowling, where is it on your talker? We're trying to link communication, talking, reading, and writing. Now it's time for reading. We're just looking at the books, and they get to read it in their head. We read it with them. They share it. It's about social interaction. Erin, are you back?
I hope so. Am I back?
Yes, you are.
Oh, good. I have no idea what happened. Thank you so much for stepping in like that.
Okay.
So this is bringing us to the end of the webinar. The ASF Communication Training Series, it's made available by the Angelman Syndrome Foundation through a generous grant from the Foster Family Charitable Foundation in California. So this is the end of our recording, but we will now take questions, and hopefully my mic will keep working, but otherwise Carolyn will be answering them all.